Nós construímos tudo isso juntos, com muito trabalho e suor. Mas a Petrobras precisa seguir um novo caminho. Vamos concentrar investimentos nos ativos de classe mundial, onde conseguimos os melhores resultados, como na exploração e produção do petróleo em águas profundas. E por isso, temos que vender algumas operações no Brasil e no exterior. O futuro da empresa depende disso. Mas os negócios continuam aqui e já estão atraindo novos investidores. O que nós construímos juntos vai continuar transformando o Brasil. Petrobras, energia para transformar.
Bem-vindos à sessão com os Keynote Speakers do Fórum de Investimentos Brasil 2021. Temos a satisfação de convidar o excelentíssimo senhor ministro de Estado da Saúde, doutor
Dr. Marcelo Queiroga, to start this session with his special speech. Thank you.
Senhor Marcelo, por gentileza.
Dr. Marcelo, you have the stand, you have the floor.
Bom dia a todos. É prazer
Good morning to everyone. I am very pleased and happy to be here participating in this event. And I would like to start saying that health is a fundamental right secured by our Constitution. Health is a right for every one of us and the right of the states guaranteed through social policies and economic policies. Our President Jair Bolsonaro always has in mind and keeps in mind on the need of conciliating the assistance to health with the development of our economy. Therefore, it is a pleasure to be here to the 5,500 participants of this forum in order to develop investment in abroad. In this difficult scenario that we are facing today, because of the emergency situation that we are facing because of the COVID-19 pandemics. We are participating in this fourth edition in a virtual format, but always optimistic with the coming results. I also would like to transmit my message of solidarity for the family of the victims of COVID-19, and thank the dedications of all the professionals involved, all the workers involved, and our fellow doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, and all the professionals engaged tirelessly in order to save lives. Since I took the position more than 70 days, we have been trying to expand and to face pandemics, focusing in three main areas: to accelerate the campaign of vaccination campaign, and to guarantee the assistance health for those who were affected by this disease, and reinforce the implementation of measures of sanitary health measures, and through the launching of testing of our population. Our federal government, through the Ministry of Health, has already hired more than 600 million doses that will be delivered until the end of this year. Up to the present moment, more than 96 million doses were already distributed to the states. More than 44 million Brazilians already received the first dose of the vaccine, and 22 million already received the second dose. We are completely sure that until the end of the year, we will be able to immunize the whole population. And for this, we have the guarantee of our health plan through our 38 agencies that are able to vaccinate, 2 million Brazilians every day. In what regards our health care. Only in 2021, more than 24,000 hospitals beds were invested, with representing more than 3.4 billion reais. 385 regulatory bed supports were authorized for hospitals. These beds are destined to treat ventilatory support and not invasion. Our Ministry of Health launched a conscientization campaign to alert the population in order to alert them against medicines that were not fully approved. Therefore, we have to hygiene our hands, use masks, and also very important, maintain physical distancing, guarantee ventilation adequate, and avoid multitudes. These are measures that associated to vaccinations are fundamental to end the pandemic of COVID-19 in our country. Besides this, we are launching a national protesting program for SARS-2 that will broaden systematically the testing of the Brazilian population against coronavirus. This program defines parameters for testing, focusing on vulnerable populations and the definition of protocols according to the epidemiological situation. Besides focusing on education, trade, public transportation, and so on. These control measures of the circulation of the virus will allow us that our society and the company may go in a continuous path and continuous growth. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemics of the new coronavirus and their devastating results showed us the importance of investing in public health systems. The pandemic resulted in the contraction of our GNP and more than 3% into 2020, with a decrease of 21% in Brazil. Besides the increase of unemployment and poverty around the world. In Brazil, the federal government raised significantly the public resources invested in health in order to fight COVID-19. Only in 2020, additional resources of 65 billion reais, 0.9% of our GNP, were allocated of actions to fight in our health public system. These resources allowed us to grow the transferences through all cities in order to improve the amount of hospital beds, besides the acquisitions of essentials outputs for testing on populations and to acquire vaccines against COVID-19. We all know that the contention of this pandemic through the mass vaccination, the active vigilance in order to detect variants and hygiene measures, this is something very, very important to the recovery of our country. And in quick processes of vaccination, our economy global could grow in 5% in 2021. Recent estimates suggest that every 3 points of percentile of applied doses lead us to projections in economy and the average of 0.13%. Therefore, the success of this campaign is fundamental for the safety return of our economic activities. In Brazil, in May, we already reached 10% of our population completely immunized, a target that was set only for September. But until the end of the year, we will have all citizens immunized in our country. We do know the continuous expansion of our population contributes significantly to the improvement of the expectations of the growth of our economy. For this year, 3.5%, and 2022, 2.5%. For Brazil, spends 9.2% of its GDP in health. On this portal, public expenditures represent 3.8%, and not considering indirect expenses, considering fiscals, renouncing that represent 0.5% of our GNT. As far as private expenses represent 4%. The economic sector also is strategic and in the composition of the added value of the Brazilian economy, 70.6%, and the generation of income and in the total of unemployment, 7.1%. With the growth and with the number of working posts increasing more than the average. All these data were supplied by the Geographical Institute. Health, besides a fundamental right, is a great opportunity for business. The subsystem of health supplementer has 22.5% of the Brazilian society, which represents more than 47 million of beneficiaries, with a network composed of 48 operation companies with budgets that go over 200 billion reais, according to the data of our supplementary agency. In this moment of crisis that we are facing, our efforts and public and private efforts are fundamental to overcome the challenges of the pandemic of the COVID-19. We'd like to reinforce thus the need of a better reintegration of all supplementary committees in our health plan. In this direction, our Ministry of Health proposes for the first time in 2 decades the establishment of a transversal policy, integrated and intersectorial, with the aim of establishing a joint work with public and private sector in order to share responsibilities as to the quality of the health assistance for the Brazilian people. Of the joint effort of the whole production chain in this country, it is fundamental to overcome the present challenges. The complex of the health service, priority sector, is very changeable with a great potential for growth. This complex links several potential sectors: biotechnology, chemicals, and electronicals, and health services. Our policy in this area aims to broaden the access of the Brazilian population to products and health technology, and at the same time to decrease the vulnerability of our health system, rationalizing the power of buying of the state. In this sense, the Health Ministry, through the Secretary of Science Technology, and with the strategic output, disposes the partnerships of the productive development that are able to develop the transfers of technology that would create a scenario of cost effectiveness much bigger for the acquisition of outputs of our health plan. Therefore, we are trying to develop technological and to partnership of development, and also the manufacturing and Brazilian territory of strategic products. The pandemic of COVID-19 also highlighted the urgency to accelerate, to develop of our Brazilian complex of development in order to reduce our dependence of productive areas such as health. We have an example in a policy with our partnership with the Oxford University and with AstraZeneca, with our Brazilian Fiocruz and Manguinhos. Through agreements, we are betting this service is already that resulted in the delivery of more than 41 million of COVID-19 was possible only on the investment that were secured by the provisory measurement that was signed by our President Jair Bolsonaro in August 6 of 2020. Therefore, our commitment of our president, and with research, innovation, and with the full capacity of Brazil of producing autonomously vaccines in Brazilian territory. Besides, we have everything incorporated to the universal access to health. We have also, and we are there present in all regionals in this country. According to data from 2017, products represented by health represented only 0.7 of the total amount of imports. The imports of pharmacological products and actives now represent 76.4 of their offers, and the imports of drugs for human use were of 24.6. In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, according to the Brazilian Alliance for Innovation, our trade balance represented a deficit of 52 million, a raise of 12.5 regarding the previous year. Our imports were $6 billion, and our exports represented $726 billion. These numbers represent the importance that Brazil will have to look the technological assistance for our health plans in the short plans, promoting structural promotions in order to raise the productive capacity of innovation of this country, resulting in of the deficit of our sector, guaranteeing to all the access to the health. Therefore, I would like to present you a challenge for you that you believe and invest in Brazil to develop our health industry. This is more, I would say that this is more than a dream. This should be a commitment for each one of us, and for those who believe in Brazil. Our public and private health system was submitted to a very hard proof. Our public health SUS has the best asset of the Brazilian society during the pandemics, and their effects were great in the Brazilian population. And we are sure that in order to overcome this pandemic, we should be much better prepared to respond to any kind of emergency. We have to secure more investments in health. And this cannot occur without a strong partnership with our private sector. Our aim goal of to recover, we go through multiple dimensions, starting from the capacitation of professionals and the rebuilding and focusing, financing, and paying our suppliers that will show efficiency and quality when providing health services. And for the strengthening, as a regulator for the health and for the establishment of a strategy, of a health strategy, digital health strategy. Also, I would like to mention by the promotion, the technological development, and the raise of the productive capacity of input and technologies and strategy for our health system. I am sure that we will be able to count with your full support and investment of all you gentlemen. Because here in Brazil today, and the situation that we are facing today, we only have one enemy, the virus. Thank you so much for your attention.
Os nossos agradecimentos ao Ministro de Estado da Saúde. Muitíssimo obrigada.
Thank you very much, Minister. We would like now to welcome Minister State of Economy, Mr. Paulo Guedes, which will make his special speech. Paulo Guedes, you have the floor. Good morning to all of you, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. It is a pleasure to be talking today to investors throughout the world over the investment perspectives and recovery and the sustainable growth of the Brazilian economy. As it was very clear by the speech of our Queiroga, that the mass vaccination is the main political economy that we can to do now, besides the main public health that we are facing. It's the mass vaccination that is going to guarantee the safe recovery and return to work of all Brazilians. The orientation of President Bolsonaro, throughout all discretion that affected us last year, we maintained a double commitment. On one side, on the other hand, with employment and the protection of the most vulnerable. We digitalized 64 million people in the beginning of the crisis, exactly in order to launch ranges of protection to our society. The strategy of distancing, social distancing, that demanded necessarily that people would need resources. So we digitalized 64 million Brazilians besides transfer for states and cities of more than 150 billions. Besides the direct transfers for those more vulnerable, 300 billions, besides ministries and other ministers that were involved in fighting this disease, in the amount of 8% of our GDP, the double of the emerging countries, and 10% above of the average of advanced economies. So we invested massively in the income and these direct incomes for those most vulnerable. We made transferences for cities and other states of the Union. And at the same time, we maintained the employment in the formal sector. On the contrary, what we saw on previous recessions, when our economy dropped 3.5% in 2015, 2016, where we destroyed 1.5 million of jobs at every year. This time now, the economy only dropped 4.1%, creating 140,000 formal employment jobs. We protected 11 million employments. This means 100 million Brazilians, 20 million assisted in health plans, and under the age of working, economically active, a population actively economically, 20 million in health assistance, 40 million in the formal market, and another formal and informal market. Actually, 46 million of workers in the informal market. Of those 46 million we have public employees. So for our policies of employment preservation, we have the identities of all those 11 million people that were protected. One third had their jobs preserved during the crisis that we faced and are still facing. Therefore, we digitalized 64 million in order to maintain, protecting 11 million employment in the formal. We spent 8.5% of our GDP transferring huge amounts for the most vulnerable, and this was the way to make Brazilian recover, creating 1 million jobs in the last 4 months last year, and 1 more million jobs in the formal market. Also in the 4 months of this year, the Brazilian economy again had a recovery in V based in these public policies of protection of the most vulnerable. But with the challenges facing this year of making this recovery cyclical of the economy based in consumption, in a recovery of the sustainable growth based in investments, and the recovery and in investments. Our first news are very good. Not only did we create formal jobs in the first 4 months, but we also register records of collections, which was a proxy to the recovery of our economical activity. And our growth provisions are made, and the increase, our hours are up, but also by the analyst seen by the analyst of the private market. As foreseen, the Brazilian economy indicates that can grow well above of our provisions of 4% of our forecast. Private agents are already reviewing for above 4% our rate growth, and happening in all sectors, in all regions, and in all cities of this country. The forecasts are above 4%, average or 4%, 4.5%, and there are those also that foresee also 5% growth this year and in 2021. Brazil is possibly the only country in the world that is making structural reforms in the midst of the pandemics. In the first year, we surprised the world with our health service. In the second year, our democracy showed its resiliency and strength, and we surprised the world again. In the beginning, the forecast was that the price would drop 10%, and advanced countries in 4%. Exactly the opposite happened. The United Kingdom, more than 9%, France, 8%, Italy, 8%, France dropped more than 7%, Germany, 6%, Japan, 4.5%, and Brazil only dropped 4.1%. We dropped last. We reacted very quickly, and the Brazilian economy is now in the route of growing again. Very surprising. In view of the advanced economy, especially the Europeans, that the Americans would grow 5%, and that Brazil would grow 2.5%. These were the forecasts that were completely wrong, and their forecasts for the GDP in 2020, and it seems that are going to be wrong once again, because economical growth is well above what they imagined. And again, the Brazilian democracy will surprise the world. We approved in very few weeks our independent central bank, a new regulatory benchmark with leverages and triggerings with control of expenditures of the government in all levels, municipal, state, and federal levels. Therefore, we have a new fiscal regimen, and that an independent central bank, reform that we are looking for decades. And in these very few weeks after the elections of the new president of the Senate, configuring a political coalition of central right wings in order to give support, parliamentary support, to give support to privatizations. In these very few weeks, besides a new fiscal benchmark and an independent central bank, we also approved a new law, a new natural gas bylaw, a new law of regulatory benchmark of sanitizing, of sanitation, 35 million Brazilians without water. And now we will, and 100 million without usage, and now we are going to immediately trigger investments in these critical areas. The first effect was the privatization of CETAI that had 50 millions of compromises of investments, mobilizing more than $10 billion for the investments in the sanitizing area in the next 10 years. Then this is only the beginning, because the estimates of the Minister of Regional Development is that the investments in the next 10 years will be more or less on more 600 billion reais, 100 billion dollars only in sanitations. Besides our transportation system and infrastructure, just approved concessions in 22 airports, 6 terminals of offshore ports, and also 1 railway. Besides this, we have our program of privatizations. Before we had subsidized sales. Now we are selling Eletrobras and Post. Eletrobras is the largest company in Latin America in energy. And Post Office has the potential of becoming of the largest company in Latin America in logistics. We really hope very competitive auctions and a guaranteed success for this company, in the same way that it happened to Vale do Rio Doce, that is a giant of mining, and there was a huge investment. And the same will happen in the other areas that I mentioned, where private investments are considered the new trigger for investment. After a year, focusing prioritally on fighting pandemics, we are resuming our structural reforms. All Brazilians should be immunized until the end of the year, as our health minister just mentioned, and we are committed, double committed, on one hand with the health of all Brazilians, and with the other of the recovery of economical recovery, and the fiscal of our expenditures that were extraordinary will be slowly reduced and removed. And we will be back to a control path of responsibilities of the public account. Our public debt that the economists foresaw would reach 7% of our because of our vigorous attack to the pandemic, spending 8% of our GDP of primary deficit, and so this only reached 7.8 our primary deficit. And our total deficit surpassed total percent of our GDP, but is already recovering 3%. Our collection is coming very strong, breaking records month after month, and records in February, records in March, in April, showing to the world the strength and the vigor of the Brazilian recovery. And the deficit is already seen decreasing from 3.5% for getting lower to 3%. We will have enough resources for health. We liberated 60 million to buy vaccines. We already have committed another 40 billion this year, and we will have enough resources. There will no back of resources to buy vaccines, and also for our local production of vaccines. Our investments in research and our deals with the Oxford University and new deals, and we are closing deals with the most important laboratories because Brazil is a country that vaccinates usually 100 million people every year, and more. We will have this. We have our own production of vaccines. Besides, we accelerated the imports of vaccines, foreign vaccines that we had been negotiating, and we are closing these deals. And we also broadened these deals with this mass vaccination and the renewal of the economical reforms. We believe that Brazil is actually presently the best, the horizon of investment on the world economy. We have more than 150 million assets in our programs of concessions and privatizations. And all these majors in all these fields of electric sector, oil and natural gas, logistics, all these branches, all these economical branches are being the goal of new regulatory benchmarks. Some of them were already approved, like natural gas, sanitation, others still undergoing the approval regime, such as electricity, and the regulatory benchmark for startups that will encompass the ecosystems of the digital economy and green economy also. The environment is also a theme, a decisive topic for the future of the Brazilian economy. We know that the future is green, and we also know that the future is digital. The benchmark for the startups allows us to join this new area, knowing that Brazil is the fourth largest digital economy in the world. Our president was elected thanks to digital economy, the fourth largest digital democracy. No, the third democracy. The third one is India, Brazil, and then Brazil. Digital economy. And we will become, I'm sure, the center of biosustainable economy. Brazil, among of the economies of the G20, has an energy that has the cleanest energetic matrix in the world, and is already advancing in wind energy that was always dominant in hydroelectric energy. and it's taking its first steps in hydrogen economy, in the era of hydrogen economy. The Amazonia will become the center of provisions of services for the economy of the environment. We do know that a tree alive is worth more than a dead tree. We also know that biopharmacological products, tourism, digital, green economy, everything is going to generate, is going to be around the Amazon. We want to help investments from abroad, foreign investment, in order to build together this digital future and this green future also. Our incentives will not only be on fossil energies, on energies of the past, of dirty energy. We're going to be reforming our fiscal, and we are going to change our access to an economy green and digital. Besides, we are reinforcing our vocation of agri-industry, stimulating the creation of added value, not only in the agribusiness field, but also in the field of minerals. We are going to reindustrialize Brazil in clean and very cheap energy. We are going to reorganize Brazil and compensate with in the transportation. We are broadening our transportation system and raising the competition of these new models. We have new ports, our access to the OECD, because the best practices are a great demand to join OECD, reduce Brazilian expenditures. The investments, private investments, are the great leverage for the renewal of the recovery of the Brazilian growth. We will be stimulating and approving also in the next days the provisory measurement in the environment of business, improving this environment, proving that Brazil today, that unfortunately is in the last places in the environment business, we should improve in 30-40 positions in the world ranking after the complementation of our provisory measures that will improve the environment of business. And this is a sequence. And first we had the freedom of economy, and then we have the law of the legal payers, taxpayers, and the provisory measures of improving the business environment. On the other hand, all the regulatory benchmarks where investments
nessas áreas em que fizemos a mudança de marcos regulatórios para estimular os investimentos privados.
Made changes in these regulatory areas.
Gás natural, saneamento, eletricidade,
gas, natural gas, electricity,
logistics. Então estamos preparando todo o ambiente de negócio
we are preparing this new business environment in Brazil because we want to grow again. Brazil needs to grow again. We have a structural program of growth for our country. Not only, we don't want to be the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th economy of the world. No, we don't. We want to be an attractive market for investors. And I think we are going to be approving in the Congress a reform. It's already a reform is on its way, and it's going to be approved hopefully by the end of the year. the House of Representatives in Brazil. I guess it's the third time in a row that we're going to surprise the world. I'm telling you, we are going to surprise the world once again, because the Brazilian House of Representatives have, and the central bank, we have already made some important decisions regarding electricity, regarding privatization, regarding natural gas. And we are going to go on with our reforms, our administration reforms. We are going to change our railroad laws to make sure, and I am sure Brazil is going to be one of the most important countries to invest in the world. Of course, the Chinese economy and the American economy, or even in Singapore, they are one of the biggest niches regarding recycling, regarding green energy. They will still be one of the main countries that other investors will choose. But Brazil is still the fourth major country to invest. And we've been getting investments. We want to speed up this pattern. We want to offer a broader portfolio, a broader investment portfolio for foreign investors. And we know that America, they have their investment agenda, and the government as well, China as well, and the Chinese government as well. So our investments in all sectors, we are a company that we are a country that wants to focus on private investments, on the foreign investments throughout Brazil. But Brazil is on the right path of transformation. We are changing as far as a country is concerned. We are leaving a monopoly scenario with state-owned companies, Petrobras, Eletrobras, and they are all becoming private companies. We are going through this privatization process in Brazil, so the activities are changing. Safety is also changing in Brazil, public safety. So we want to keep on growing. It's an ongoing process, and we want to foster investments in the next decade. I'd like to make sure that you all understand the potential that Brazil has for prosperity. And how prosperous Brazil is, because it's a goal for us to transform Brazil's economy. We are going to control our expenditures. We already had our Social Security reform. We dropped our interest rates. When we changed our fiscal policies, Brazil had a very weak fiscal policy, and we worked hard to change that, to change the fiscal policies. We also focused on civil construction, which is generating new jobs. So Brazil is growing again regarding the surrendering of services, regarding the service sector. Brazil is growing again. Then our next focus is going to be on the regulatory reforms, aligned with the central bank and the fiscal control. We're going to speed up the privatization of companies and the relationship between debt and the GDP of Brazil, Brazil's GDP. We didn't reach even 90% of the forecast of the debt relationship, the debt GDP relationship. So we need to reduce public expenses, and we need to focus on state measures. measures that will
Estamos
transform
atentos à
our
pandemia.
country. We are
Podemos estender o auxílio
attentive
emergencial se a
to the
pandemia resistir ao nosso
emergency
programa de
needs,
vacinação em massa.
emergential needs of the
Mas sabemos também
population. But
que
we
temos que
also
manter o
know
compromisso
that
fiscal.
we need to be committed
Apenas gastos relacionados à
to
pandemia estarão
expanding
fora do teto de gastos.
to the expanding regarding the pandemic COVID-19
Lançando programas
spending.
para estímulo do emprego. Vem aí
We
o
need to
BIF, Bônus de
foster
Inclusão Produtiva,
new jobs, the
e o
creation of
bônus de
new
incentivo à
jobs.
qualificação profissional.
And we need to train,
Esperamos também
to
criar
have qualified, highly qualified
milhões de
professionals. So
empregos
we need to focus
nos
on
próximos
education
meses,
as well. In the upcoming
também
months,
para atender os mercados
we
dos
also
informais. Os
want
38
to focus on
milhões
the
de
gig
brasileiros que
economy,
protegemos com
the
auxílio
gig
emergencial,
economy,
mas
the
que precisam de ajuda
self-employed
nesse retorno seguro ao
Brazilians.
trabalho. Vacina de um lado
We are going
e
to focus on
desoneração de folha do outro
vaccination
lado.
and
Ou
also
seja, regime
on this
emergencial,
part of the economy, on the
para que esses empregos possam ser
emergential
criados.
need of helping the
Então, eu
vulnerable
convido a
population.
todos
So I would
que
like to
venham e
invite each and
apoiem
every
a
one of
economia
you
brasileira
to
nesse
support the
esforço
Brazilian
nosso de
economy,
reconstrução
because we are
e
going
prosseguem
under
também nossos acordos
a
internacionais. Fizemos o
rebuilding
Mercosul parado há
process.
8 anos,
We
fizemos
are
a União Europeia que
rebuilding
estava parada há
our
20 anos.
economy.
Estamos
We are rebuilding
negociando
our
com
country.
Canadá,
We've been
fizemos o
negotiating
EFTA,
with
European Free
Canada,
Trade Area, conversando com o Canadá, estamos
starting
conversando com a Coreia do Sul,
with
estamos
Canada and
conversando com
South
o Japão,
Korea,
estamos
Japan,
avançando também com
and
os
also
Estados Unidos, fizemos um
the
acordo com os
United
Estados Unidos
States. We've signed an agreement
e
with the United States,
continuaremos
and we will
no
keep
caminho da prosperidade.
on
A transformação
pursuing
do Estado
prosperity.
brasileiro,
We want
o
to be
mergulho
on the
nos
right
mercados
path
globais,
to prosperity.
recebendo
We were one
investimentos de
of the
todo mundo,
biggest global markets in the
privatizando,
world,
acelerando as
and we
concessões
are focused
e
on the
retomando o
privatization
crescimento
of the
econômico,
companies.
gerando
We
emprego
want to
e
foster
renda para a população brasileira.
investments,
Obrigado a
and we
todos.
want the Brazilian economy
Estejam
to
conosco
grow
nos
again.
próximos anos.
So thank you very much, all of you.
Agradecemos os senhores ministros por suas
Thank you very
participações, bem
much,
como ao
all the
distinto público
ministers
que
for
nos acompanha.
participating here
A
today.
programação do Fórum de
And
Investimentos
our
Brasil
agenda
2021
for
continua a partir das 14
2021
horas,
forum will get
horário de
back at
Brasília,
2
quando
p.m.
daremos início
Brazilian
à
City
sequência de
time,
painéis
okay?
temáticos.
And then
Os
we will
painéis
have
ocorrem de
the
forma
topic,
simultânea,
panels.
divididos em 3
They will
canais de
happen
transmissão, e os
simultaneously.
detalhes estão
Bear in
todos
mind,
na
and all the
programação,
details
que pode ser
will be
conferida no menu
available
Agenda
in our
aqui
agenda
mesmo,
on the
na
menu
plataforma
in
virtual
our
do BIF
platform,
2021.
okay?
Aproveite e
So,
visite também os estandes
make sure
virtuais e
that you
realize
get in touch
networking
with
com
our
outros
virtual
participantes.
booth,
A
and
plataforma
you can
estará
interact
disponível
with
até o
our
dia 4 de
participants.
junho,
It
sexta-feira.
will be
Até
available
logo!
until June 4th,
Todos os
Friday.
anos, Itaipu entrega milhões de megawatts-hora e transforma a vida das pessoas. É a energia que está no sorriso da Aninha, na brincadeira do Caio, no trabalho do Paulo, na vida da Maria. E com toda essa energia, Itaipu entrega obras que beneficiam a nossa gente. Porque mais do que gerar energia, somos uma usina de entregas. Itaipu, o amanhã já começou.